Logo fades into view. New York Association on Independent Living. Thank you to our 2022 webinar series sponsor, Waymo. Text appears on screen. The Importance of Braille. Who will be joining us to do opening remarks. And so without further ado, I will introduce Julie Hovey.
Thank you. Hi, everybody. I'm Julie Hovey, the Associate Commissioner at the New York State Commission for the Blind. I want to start by thanking Lindsay and her team at NIL for collaborating with us on this workshop. The Commission has been focusing on Braille literacy and promoting it within our own staff, participants, private agencies, and all of our partners, including the Independent Living Centers. So I appreciate everybody being here today. I do think that you will learn a lot about the importance of Braille for people to live independent, quality lives. So thank you. And I would like to introduce Maria Dibble, the Executive Director from the Southern Tier Independent Living Center located in Binghamton.
Thank you very much. I'm really pleased to be here today. And I just want to start by saying I have been a Braille user all of my life. Braille has made a big difference for me. I still use it, even though today I use a computer and I'm pretty literate with using the computer and I use it all the time. And it has mostly changed my life for the better. But still, if I need to make a quick note, if I need to carry a note in my purse to an appointment, if I need to write on my calendar, because I still keep my calendar in Braille, as archaic as that may seem, instead of using Google or whatever other calendar, Outlook or whatever. I find that a really handy way to be able to just reach over and check my calendar before I get into work, when I get into work, rather than having to turn on my computer. If you leave here with nothing else, please leave with the belief that Braille is critical to people's independence. And I don't just mean children, though. It's critical for children who are visually impaired to learn Braille, but also for adults. And if they don't learn it well enough to be able to read an entire book, if they learn it well enough to give them, make a quick note for themselves, it adds to their independence. Just think about how many times you might give a note to yourself, write a note to yourself and carry it with you, or keep notes for a presentation or something like that. It's the same flexibility that people who are visually impaired need to use and need to have in order to be able to be as independent as everybody else is. Children who learn to read Braille are using the same part of the brain as somebody who decided that's learning to use Braille. And if one doesn't use that and doesn't train that part of the brain, it's going to have difficulties. Language is very important. Reading language is critical. So we shouldn't ever think of denying a person who is visually impaired the use of a written language just because we have talking computers now and talking books and things like that. Those things are wonderful. They're excellent tools, but people all have to learn to read. And that's people who are children or adults. If adults are capable, sometimes an older person may not be able to learn Braille because they may not have enough sensitivity in their fingers. But if they do, that is critical to offer. Let them make the decision because it offers so much to an individual's life. I really can't emphasize that enough. Commission is going to give a presentation on Braille literacy, and I have never been so happy to support a policy that the Commission has, and that Braille literacy is critical to the growth and development of children and adults, no matter what their age is. If they have a visual impairment, this is a necessary critical tool for them to have at their fingertips, so to speak. So I might not be here till the end of the webinar. So if anybody has any questions for me or needs me for any other information, you can reach me at mdibble, MDIBBLE at STIC, S as in Sam, TIC-CIL.org. I promised I would be brief, so I'm going to end here, and I'm going to turn it over to Maureen Strainge from the New York State Commission for the Blind. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Maria. Hi, I'm Maureen Strainge, and I'm the instructor for the blind at the Albany District Office. I'm a certified vision rehabilitation therapist. and I've been teaching for quite some time. And my colleague, Madison Neer, who is the Commission's, the same office, she is the Certified Orientation and Mobility Specialist here at the Albany District Office. And she's joining me as well because she's also a certified vision rehabilitation therapist. And she's moving the slides for me too, which I really appreciate. So we're going to get started with the purpose today is to share some information with you. We want to put it straight out there at the beginning. We know that there are going to be some of you who have some experience and knowledge of Braille, and others who may be very proficient users, and others who don't have a lot of information. So we are really starting at the foundation level. We will be answering your questions at the end, because maybe sometimes while we're in the presentation, hopefully our presentation is robust enough that we may have even answered your question. So we're going to hold those off to the end. So what we want to do today is share our knowledge with you, and maybe even dispel some misinformation with you. We want to add more information for your reference for when you're working with your participants and consumers. We're going to share the history of Braille, what Braille is and what it isn't, common terminologies, and introduction to Braille letters, who teaches Braille and who are the students, and everyday uses for Braille. Maria gave an excellent introduction for us with telling how she uses it currently and how that has changed over her life. So everyday uses aren't always just, written in stone either. They can change as people do. We want to encourage you to share information about Braille with your participants so they can make decisions about pursuing Braille instruction. And we also want to share ways to maybe plant some seeds that intrigues them or interests them with for potential learners. So, as I said earlier, we know that you probably have some concept of Braille. Some people have a robust information and others don't. We're not going to ask you to share them with you, with us, but we have listed some of the more common ideas about Braille, certainly things that both Madison and I have heard in the past, and I'm going to read those off. You don't need to share what your ideas are, and then we'll share ours with you as well. So some of these might strike as things that sound familiar in your head, or maybe not. So I'm going to read them off. It's really complicated and hard to learn Braille. Braille is impractical for my participants. It can be vital to success in employment. It's practical for everyone to learn. It's simple to use and learn. It looks confusing. It takes a lot of time to learn. It's really complicated. Oh, I'm sorry. It's like learning another language. It is another language. Braille is outdated in this technological age. It's amazing that someone can read it. I don't know how they do it. I wouldn't have the patience to learn Braille. I would learn JAWS and use my smartphone if I lost my vision. I would be lost without Braille in my life. Braille looks like fun to learn and teach. So some of those might have struck home with some of you. So Madison and I are going to share our ideas, and we'll be honest with you. We are definitely biased in our approach. Obviously, we wouldn't be here if we didn't promote Braille instruction. So we're certainly going to encourage teaching and learning Braille. We will certainly admit that Braille is complex and it takes time to learn, and it is still enormously beneficial even in the 21st century. It adds independence, it adds depth, options, and normalcy for anyone who uses it. The reason I say that it adds independence, that is, I'd like you to think about how wonderful it would be to read something when you want to, and not have to wait for a visitor to show up or somebody, a coworker, to have a minute of free time to maybe read you something because you can't read it. Braille adds the depth of experience. So in a museum display, a Braille display that's nearby an exhibit allows the visitor to know and understand more about what's going on in that exhibit. When I say it adds options, what happens to your technology device if the power goes out or its battery stops? Braille doesn't use batteries and doesn't need cell service. And as we know, you can read it in the dark. So it works out just fine in a power outage. It also adds normalcy. Just like a print reader, a Braille reader has a choice to peruse an entire document. They can maybe look at an entire menu that's in Braille instead of having to say to the person that's with them or their wait staff person, do you have this on the menu or don't you? They can instead search the entire menu and look for what they want and explore the entire thing, and maybe even find an entree that they hadn't known existed and they want to try something different. So Louis Braille is our champion. You'll hear me make reference to him many times. Louis Braille is the man who created the Braille system. And so Madison has a video that she's going to share with you all.
Where does Braille come from? The story begins in 1812 in France and a young boy called Louis Braille. He lost his sight in one eye when he was 3. This was the culprit, a sharp tool called an awl, which he was playing around with in his father's workshop. His eye got infected and the infection spread to the other eye. By 5, Louis Braille was completely blind. But he was determined, and he went on to win a scholarship at France's Royal Institute for Blind Youth. At the time, the system for reading was pretty basic, just raised letters on a page, so he started working on a new code that would be quicker and more efficient. By the time he was 15, Braille's new system was basically complete, and the first edition was published in 1829. Braille's system was based on a military code called night writing. Invented by Captain Charles Barbier, it was a system of embossed dots and dashes that soldiers could read safely with their fingers on the battlefield at night. Braille simplified the system, reducing the cells from 12 to 6 raised dots, so they were the ideal size for a fingertip to feel with one touch. Braille created his raised dots using an awl, the same sharp tool that had caused his blindness, and a flat grill to keep the lines straight and readable. It's read from left to right like other European scripts. Braille is not a language, it's a system of writing, which means it can be adapted to different languages. Braille codes have been developed for maths and scientific formulae. Braille loved music and invented a system of Braille for writing music too. But the medical establishment was conservative and Braille's innovation was slow to be adopted. He died of tuberculosis, aged 43, 2 years before his system was finally taught at the institute where he'd been a student. 100 years later, he was reburied at the Pantheon in Paris in honour of his work, though his local village insisted on keeping his hands. Over time, the system did spread throughout the French-speaking world. By 1882, it was in use across Europe and had reached North America by 1916. A universal Braille code for English was formalised in 1932. Braille has been revolutionary for many blind people around the world, but with the rise of new technologies, including computers that talk, literacy rates are on the decline. In 1999, a second eponym was given to this extraordinary man. A rare type of asteroid was named 9969 Braille by NASA, a timeless tribute to a great human being.
Thanks for watching.
Well, thank you. I'm sorry for the difficulties there that we had. So what is Braille? We're going to number 8. Yeah. So Braille is a tactile touch. You need to mute now. Sorry. We're both in the same room. That's our challenge here. So next slide. So Braille is a tactile or touch alphabet. It is not a language. It is an alphabet that is used by Braille people to read and write. An alphabet is a set of letters and symbols used when reading and writing a language. And Braille uses the same rules for reading, for writing, punctuation that English uses. It is not separate. We follow everything that English does as well. And the reason that it is not a language is because a language is it's a form of communication with its own grammar and syntax structure. So each language has its own alphabet so that an English Braille reader cannot read Japanese Braille. I could not read the Braille in Japan when I was trying to, and I did try, but I had no idea what it was saying. So, and the reason why I say that it is not a language is because language has specific rules. So in English, we don't say things like the three child go not to bed. We don't say he were ready tomorrow. We have rules about having subject and nouns agree with each other. We're going to keep past and present and tense all together in the same system. So that's why it is an alphabet and not a language. If I had written out those sentences in print and transcribed them into Braille, I would have transcribed them as poorly written as they sounded, but I wouldn't change it into proper English. So this is a depiction of what the Braille alphabet looks like for you, and we're going to come back to it again, but I just want to show you a little bit of exposure there if you haven't ever seen what it looks like, and we'll get into it a little in the next slide. So Braille is designed using what's called the Braille cell, and that was mentioned in the video. So a Braille cell is where each one is going to be, each letter is going to be designated within this setup of 6 dots. So they are 6 raised dots arranged in 2 columns of 3. And the upper left one is the dot 1, and then below it is 2 and 3. And in the upper right is 4, and then 5 and 6 underneath it. So depending upon the arrangements of the raised dots will determine the letter, the meaning of that cell itself. So this is a depiction of simulated Braille. So when looking at the computer, the blackened dots signify the symbol. So this is the letter A in Braille. And now we'll go back to that same, we'll go, you'll get to see the alphabet again. And as I said earlier, I'm a great appreciator of Louis Braille and his intelligence. Now that you've heard a little bit more, I want to point out a few things here. So I want you to take a look, if you're able to, A through J. And what I want to point out to you is that those dots that we were just looking at, there are no dots in the numbers 3 and 4. What he did is he started with readers. He wanted them to hone their early skills, and so he has just the dots in the 2 upper rows. So 1, 2, and 4 and 5 will be in those combinations only, will be A through J. And then let's take a look at letters K through T. For K through T, what he did is he took the letter A with dot 1 and he added dot 3 to it, and it became the K. He added dot 3 to B, and it's become the letter L. And he did that all the way across from K to T, so that he's expanding that space on the person's finger, but it also gives them some system. It is not just a random set of dots, which it can appear at first to be, but it is not. And then I want to point out the letters U through Z. I'm going to have you skip over the letter W for a moment, but the letters U through Z are the first 5 letters, A through E, with dots 3 and 6 added to it. Again, so no randomness there. There is a logical system to it. The reason why W does not fit this format is because there is no letter W in the French language, which was Louis Braille's native language. So that is why the W does not fit any of that. So he again, worked on trying to get somebody to have those first skills and then expand their skill set further. I just want to introduce some other Braille terminology. Many of you are familiar with cells and dots. So I just want to point out a few other things. Many years ago, well, I guess in my career, it's been several years ago, within the last 8 or 10, a lot of people have started using the term contracted and uncontracted Braille. When I first started teaching, it was grade 1 and grade 2 Braille. For some reason that has changed. They're both interchangeable. Neither one is more politically correct. It's just, I think, probably easier for people to understand. One is contracted and one is not. So in grade 1 or uncontracted Braille, it contains the letters of the alphabet and numbers and punctuation. Uncontracted Braille takes much, much more space. Fewer manufactured Braille materials are available in the format, but the Talking Book and Braille Library does have a small collection of it for loan. So that is possible. Uncontracted Braille is going to be used more often maybe in labeling or recreation from playing cards. Uno cards are also available in Braille. And some people may choose only to learn uncontracted Braille. I have 2 former colleagues who had recently taught only the numbers to people because that's what they wanted to do for traveling and using elevators. I just realized when I'm looking at my notes and say that I did not point out to you what I should have when we were back at the alphabet card itself. One of the other things that Louis Braille did is that he took the letters A through J and created them to mean with a symbol in front of it, a number sign, which we refer to. The A is going to be for 1, B for 2, C for 3, up to the letter J, which will be the 0. So again, somebody doesn't have to learn a separate whole system for using digits and numbers. So, go back. So contracted Braille is when we think, some of people may have been around when there used to be a shorthand where secretaries used to learn shorthand. Some of you may not, but there were symbols for that. What contracted Braille does is it uses common words and common partial words that are contracted into a separate dot configuration, and with certain rules that are attached to each of their usage. So words like end of, for, the, and with each have their own symbol, and they can be used as an entire word. It could also be used within a word. There are 23 letter signs. We don't, which will mean an entire word if they're used alone. We don't use the letters A, I, and O because those 3 already exist as words. So an example of this is if the letter P were by itself in a sentence, it would stand for the word people. So this allows somebody to have much more speed and fluidity when they're reading. There are more than 40 short form contractions, such as AB stands for about, IMM stands for immediate. And I think anybody who is been a print reader can relate to this. I'm sure you use your own short forms of words or your own abbreviations. Many of us will see, on a receipt, we'll see PD for paid. It's the same exact contraction in Braille as it is as the clerk just put down on a receipt. It's PD is paid. I don't want to get into all of the contractions, all of the different kinds of contractions, because that's not what we want to do. We don't want to teach you Braille, and I don't want it to appear more complex. It would be the opposite of the goal that we set out at the beginning, was to have people engage in it rather than be like, oh, no, that sounded too tough for me. Another term that's been used in the last decade or so is something called UEB, and that's Unified English Braille. And that is where a group of people worked for several years to create and revise the original standard Braille to make it more, to modernize it really for the 21st century. Some of the contractions that were being used, if it didn't get revised, those contractions were confusing, especially in email addresses and all. So the changes were made to increase the readability and to create Braille configurations for print symbols that didn't exist. Bullet points, things like the euro sign, those did not exist for Lewis Braille. So they've been added now. Some of the advantages of UEB, as well as for contracted Braille, is that it allows for increased speed and efficiency when reading. It also reduces the amount of storage space for Braille materials, whether it be on paper or electronically. There are things that are unique in Braille that don't exist in print. So if you have ever seen print, you know that the capital letters and lowercase letters look differently. They're shaped differently. The capital A, the lowercase a, every single letter has a different shape to it for capitals and lowercase. We can't change the shape of the dots in Braille. So what they do is Braille uses what's called indicators to preceding a letter or a group of words to signify that the next cell or group of cells is capitalized, or maybe it's in italics or bolded, because the Braille user needs to know that information is capitalized, italics, or bolded. So my example here is Thomas, where the letter T is only capitalized. There would be one symbol where it's my next is an abbreviation for the New York State Commission for the Blind. So that person would need to know that that entire an acronym is capitalized. And so that would be indicated to them as well. And as I said earlier, when he created his system, Lewis Braille assigned the first 10 letters A to J as numbers if they're preceded by his number signs 3, which are dots 3, 4, 5, and 6. So we talked about a lot of the reading of Braille. I want to let you know that, the other part of being an alphabet is that you must be able to write it, otherwise it can't be read. So the original tool for writing Braille was a slate and stylus, and you saw the more antiquated slate and stylus in the video. It doesn't look like that completely anymore, but it hasn't changed dramatically either over time. The slate holds the Braille paper and has indentations with many individual cells in each row. And then the user embosses the dots by using the stylus. Instructors have seen fewer and fewer younger students being taught to use the portable devices. Now, there are kids that I've worked with who are 12 and 14 and 15 years old who have never been introduced to a slate and stylus, even though they are proficient Braille users. A Braille labeler embosses Braille onto Dymo tape. I'm sure many of you are familiar with a Dymo tape labeler for putting a more durable label on something, and that also exists in Braille. And the last one on this slide is the Braille writer. it's a typewriter style appliance, which holds an entire sheet of paper. So that allows the user to continue writing without moving the slate every 4 rows. It also makes it much easier to proofread your own work, or where was I before the phone call. And so there are 6 keys on there, 1 for each of the 6 dots. And then there's a space bar, a line advancer, and a backspace. The other type of Braille, which has been new in the last few decades, is something that's referred to as a refreshable Braille display. And these are electronic devices which have a line, maybe 2, depending upon the model itself, for reading Braille. So instead of embossing Braille onto paper, the person would be able to put their fingers on this Braille display, and there are pins underneath that are going to raise and lower as the person reads across that line, and then it will just continue to advance as the person goes from line to line. It allows much more portability and quicker access for computer files and digitized Braille. There are also 2 Braille systems, one for math and one for music. And they alluded to that. They mentioned that in the video as well. The math one is the Nemeth code, which was named after the mathematician who created that, Mr. Nemeth. And Nemeth code is usually taught by teachers of the visually impaired when they're teaching children math, or we refer to them very often as TVIs. This slide shows you the 3 devices that we were just talking about. I don't have a picture of the Braille dymo tape, but on the left is the Braille writer. They can be called Perkins Brailler. They're again the same thing. There is a newer model of it as well, which is a little bit more lightweight. This particular machine that is depicted here on the left side is a very durable, heavier model, and I refer to them as tanks. But you'll see in front that there are 6 keys and a space bar in the center of it. On the left-hand side is the line advance, and on the right-hand side is the backspace. So not a very sophisticated machine in any way, but wonderfully useful. The middle picture is of a slate and stylus, and that's where the Braille paper would go between those. You can see those little, if you're able, those little white gaps that are showing there are the individual cells, and then the paper would go in, so that using that stylus that's there, the person would use that and emboss in each of those individual cells across. And on the right-hand side is the refreshable Braille display. And again, if you take a quick look, you'll see up at the top, there are the 6 keys for each of the dots 1 through 6. In the middle section, there is a space bar in the center and a backward and a line advance, as well as the Braille display. Those little white dots, if you're able to see them, those are the pins that would come up and allow the person to feel the Braille as it was moving. And then because it's computerized and much more sophisticated, it has that center piece as well as the circle for accessing files and all that, which I couldn't tell you how that works. So thank you, Madison. And so I'm going to introduce Madison, who is going to do the next part of the presentation.
Thank you, Maureen. Can everybody hear me okay? Just want to be sure, since I've been muting and unmuting myself the whole time.
Yep, you're
Okay,
coming in clear.
Great. So I'm going to discuss here how we, Maureen and I, as trained vision rehab therapists, would begin to teach someone Braille. So again, this is a way that we would do it from our perspective. It may be slightly different than someone, as I'll get to, who's a teacher of the visually impaired who works primarily with children. So first, if we had a new participant who was looking to read Braille, we would start with tracking exercises. So for this, we could even make our own exercises using the Brailler that Maureen showed. But we would try to assess before we got too far into it, how is the student's tactile sensitivity for reading Braille? So we would ourselves create lines of Braille on a piece of paper, using a variety of different shapes of Braille, and see, can the student read tactually and follow and keep their fingers on that line from left to right. During this, we're also teaching the correct finger placement and hand placement for reading Braille. The students learning to maintain a light touch and not to scrub the Braille. Scrubbing the Braille is if the student is pressing down too hard or possibly rubbing their fingers back and forth on the Braille to get a better feel to identify what it is, but that in fact could flatten the Braille so it may not be read in the future. So teaching the student how to read, but also assessing their tactile sensitivity. We would continue these exercises if we see that the student is able to track and increase the complexity of the lines of Braille that they're reading. So possibly making it a little bit more complex by having a line of Braille symbols and then one among the line that's different, and asking the student, can they find the one that's different, and so on. And then also creating more than one line on the page. So maybe there's 5 lines, and seeing if the student after instruction can independently go from left to right and then find the line below. Or are they skipping a line and not realizing it? Or when they read from left to right, are they veering up or down and off the line? So we would only move on to the more complex exercises if we saw they were, they were doing fine and they were independent with it. All right, we would then move on to beginning to teach the Braille letters. So I will show a picture of this for those who can see it in the next slide, but we often use either a 6-section egg carton or even a 6-section baking tray to demonstrate in a larger form the Braille cell, as Maureen was talking about before. So discussing how we have dot 1 in the top left corner, and then 2, 3 below it, and then 4 in the top right corner, and 5, 6 below it. We could then fill these, for the egg carton, we may fill it with foam balls or ping pong balls, or I've even seen some people use fishing bobbers. If someone was using a baking tray, they could fill the tray with tennis balls to simulate that cell is full. To teach this, we would start with A, even in a lesson, maybe just do A and B or A, B, C, depending how the student's doing. That's enough for them to learn usually in one lesson, review it at the next before moving on. So this is an image of a 6-section egg carton. We have it vertical, so it's creating 2 columns. The next image here is that same egg carton, but the ping pong balls are actually labeled 1 through 6. So if a student did have low vision, they could be using this to understand, okay, 1 is in the top left column and so forth. This next image is showing only 1 of the ping pong balls in dot 1. The rest of the areas are empty. So this would indicate, for instance, that it's A. So we may show the student this, they can then feel it, how only dot 1 has been filled with the ping pong ball, and then empty it and have the student try to make A themselves. They would then place the ping pong ball where they believe it should be placed to create A, and then so on with additional letters as they're taught it. So next I want to speak a bit about who would be candidates for learning Braille. If an individual cannot attain a functional reading speed using large print or low vision devices to read regular sized print, then Braille should be considered. However, not all individuals are good candidates for Braille instruction. So individuals who could be a candidate for Braille instruction include those with progressive eye conditions. So there's certainly people that we work with who can read some print, whether it's regular sized or large print, but they're projected to have a decrease in vision in the future. It's a great time to start early before they really need it, so they're better prepared for when they do lose more vision. Individuals who have the ability to read English are also good candidates. Unfortunately, we do need someone to have that basis of the English language before we can begin teaching them, because we are not TVIs. We wouldn't be able to teach first about the English language and grammar on all of that. They would need to already be an English learner. All right, so some factors for success. There are, as we all know, who do teach Braille, many different factors to determine when someone will be successful or how long it may take. We always get that question, how long will it take someone to learn Braille? Well, it really, really depends on the individual person. We do discuss with everyone that Braille can be a time commitment. It's something that will take several visits from us. You know, as I talked about earlier, we're not going to teach them A through Z in one visit. We'll really start out slow and then go from there. Does the student want or need to learn grade 1 and grade 2 Braille? As Maureen discussed, the differences between grade 1 and grade 2, we would usually begin teaching grade 1. Once that's mastered, the student would then go on to learn grade 2. If they need to. Some people will not need it or want to, like Maureen was saying, some individuals just want to learn A through J and the numbers so they can more easily, travel within a building at their work site and hit the elevator buttons independently. So in that case, they may only need the A through J letters and the numbers. Is the student motivated to learn and practice Braille? It is really crucial that individuals have the desire to learn Braille. If we come back, maybe a week after we began instruction and the student has not practiced, we can really tell, and we won't see much progress if they're only having maybe an hour lesson once a week. We leave the student with materials where they can practice and memorize what they're learning. And we do encourage different strategies for how they can practice on their own, whether it's just practicing A through C before we can return again. That can really make a difference for progression. More to candidates for Braille. Individuals who are deafblind are great candidates for learning Braille. Braille can help people who are deafblind access information and print such as books and magazines. Individuals who are deafblind can use Braille note takers to communicate with others who don't know Braille or their communication system. Individuals who are deafblind can use communication cards to ask a specific question or request assistance considering a specific item or a task. So for example, if someone wished to get assistance with crossing a street, a deafblind traveler may hold up a communication card to someone, in the public, which reads, "I am deafblind and need assistance to cross the street. If you can help, please tap me on the shoulder." Other cards they may have may include the user's preferences for ordering coffee or determining on which track a train will be arriving. So if someone who is deafblind carries in communication cards, they most likely have more than one. They would benefit from having Braille labeled on these cards to identify which card they're holding up. So they're ensuring they're asking and receiving the correct information. All right, a little bit more about deafblind individuals. They could also benefit from using Braille on tactile maps. We work with them very similar to anyone else who is visually impaired, but sometimes on a tactile map, there's information in Braille as to what room or what building in images that they're feeling, or a key on the map where they need to read, okay, what is this line or what does this texture on the map indicate? Braille instructions for operating devices. So there are devices that come with Braille instructions, and having the ability to read those instructions independently allows someone to operate a device completely independently, where they may need to otherwise wait until someone's available who's sighted to assist them to learn how to use a device. Next, okay, who may not be a candidate for Braille? So individuals who have neuropathy in the hands and fingers may not be a great candidate for Braille. So neuropathy causes some numbness, tingling in the hands and fingers. So obviously that may decrease someone's tactile sensitivity and ability to read the smaller dots that make up Braille. Individuals with a cognitive impairment, such as dementia or Alzheimer's, may have a difficult time retaining the information from lesson to lesson and progressing with learning, what the different dots mean. Individuals with poor fine motor coordination. So we would test, like I said in the beginning, or assess in the beginning, how is someone's how is someone's fine motor skills? Are they able to not only read the Braille and feel it underneath their fingertips, but can they read from left to right, or are they going up and down over the paper? Someone who has a history of strokes may not have the finger sensitivity to discriminate Braille dots. Participants with additional disabilities and those who cannot read English, as I said, may have a more challenging time reading Braille. All right, so in the end, participants really should be considered for Braille on an individual basis. Factors that should be considered include their visual impairment, their lifestyle, goals, and any additional disabilities. There is really no eye condition that makes an individual a candidate for Braille or not. Okay, so next I'm going to go into where Braille could be used in the daily life of someone. So it really can be used every day for everything. Braille is simply a print substitute. If you could use it for print, you can use it for Braille. As I started to say earlier, adults learn to read and write using the code from a VRT, a vision rehab therapist, or a Braille instructor. Children learn to read, write, spell, and use proper grammar using the code, but individually taught by a teacher of the visually impaired. Braille is used all around us in our daily lives. So in the home, it can be used and put onto food packaging. Appliances can be labeled. We do that all the time. We may go into someone's home and use the Braille labeler, as Maureen discussed, to label the markings on their appliances so they can use them independently. Cleaning supplies can be labeled with Braille so someone knows whether they're picking up the Windex or the wood cleaner spray. Clothing could be labeled. We could put Braille tags on clothing items so they know what item it is, maybe what size or what color, to help them pick out their clothes for the day. Pill bottles can be labeled with Braille so someone knows which medication they have, if it's something they need to take daily, or if it's something they take at a certain time of the day. Microwave ovens, just like appliances, those are often labeled with Braille. Sometimes they even have microwaves now that have Braille labels. I have seen that before, which is really nice to see. Cosmetics. So if someone is wearing makeup, they may be able to tell sometimes what an item is by the shape, but if they have several of the same items, such as lipstick or eyeshadow, and they have several different palettes of eyeshadow or different shades of lipstick, they need to discriminate which one do they want to wear that day. Do they want to wear the red or the blush? So having a Braille label would be allowing someone to choose what they want independently. In the community, we do find some restaurants have Braille menus, but you have to ask. They won't offer. Usually, you have to ask if they can provide you with a Braille menu. Elevator panels have Braille on them, or they should, inside the elevator, but also outside on the door panel of the elevator, which someone could use to identify if they're on the floor they want to be before they exit or enter the elevator. Braille signs, I'm sure we see them around our workplaces, would indicate, what floor the person's on, where the emergency exits are, and so forth. ATM keypads have Braille on them to allow someone to operate the ATM independently, which allows for privacy and independence. At work, someone may use Braille to take notes during a presentation or to prepare notes for a presentation. Again, this could be using a variety of items that we talked about, whether it's the slate and stylus, the Braille writer, or a Braille note taker. For refreshable Braille displays, we did talk about, again, a way to take notes, an office directory, and file folders. We do quite a bit of labeling to assist people with labeling their files in their office, so they know, what they're pulling out of each file folder if they all seem similar. So now we have some images of what we just discussed, how everyday items can be used and labeled with Braille. So on the left, we have an image of a medication bottle with a Braille label on it. On the right, we have a food item. It's a soup can labeled with Braille again. So someone could reach into their pantry, independently find what they want to take out. They want to be sure, perhaps, that they want the soup can and not a can of baked beans. They may feel similar, so a way to tell them apart is to have them labeled with Braille. All right, on the left is an image of a microwave with Braille. So we have the numbers 1 through 0, and they have, as Maureen was indicating earlier, the number symbol or number indicator, and then the Braille number. On the left, we have 2 different lipstick tubes labeled with Braille. And then on the right, we have a men's tie, or anyone can wear the tie, but a tie. And on the back side is a Braille label. So it's put on the back side, so it's not visible and it's a little bit discreet. So they could keep that on there, hang it up when they're done for the day, and then pick out a new tie for the next day. On the left, we have a restroom sign labeled with Braille. On the right, we have an image of elevator buttons. So this shows on the top, we have the button for floor 3, 2, 1, and S. And sometimes you may see a star on or what's considered the main floor. So some hotels or businesses call this floor 1, some call it the lobby. You may see star L, some call it main, so you may see star M, but the star is also an indicator to someone that it's the main floor, and the star is also raised. So all of these numbers, the 3, 2, 1, and the letter S, are raised print. So someone could also feel that if they needed to. Okay, here is an image on the slide of an ATM keypad. So at the top left, we have 1, and then going all the way down, we have 0 at the bottom. Again, allowing someone to independently and privately access the ATM. Next is an image of someone possibly at work using a refreshable Braille display. Okay, so when should Braille be introduced to an adult? So at the first meeting, this is also referring a little bit to the Commission for the Blind, but the Commission for the Blind counselor should be emphasizing the many benefits of using Braille. The individual should learn that they could receive an assessment from the vision rehab therapist to determine if Braille would be a good fit for them. The vision rehab therapist would then introduce Braille at the assessment. So for example, vision rehab therapists may have their business card in large print and in Braille. They could also mark something in the participant's residence or even give the participant their own name in Braille. So we want something to leave with the person, whether it's their own name in Braille or my business card in Braille, that is something tactual that may interest them and spark an interest. And we can explain a little bit about what the Braille says and how it's possible to learn Braille, because sometimes we know it does sound like a daunting thing in the beginning. All right, well, that's really all we have for today. I wanted to list here Julie Hovey is our Associate Commissioner. Her contact information is below if you would like to reach out and learn more. Her phone number is 518-474-7299. And Julie's email is Julie, Julie, .Hovey, HOVEY, at ocfs.ny.gov. We'd also like to open it up for questions at this time. I think there's a few we've received, but if someone wants to, check in on those, thank you.
I can read those for you. So our first question, what is the impact of increasing Braille accessibility on workforce development? I think either Madison and Maureen, either of you.
I didn't hear the question.
Sorry. What is the impact of increasing Braille accessibility on workforce development?
I can't tell you that, to be honest. I don't know, but I can tell you that, that in unemployment and underemployment of people who are blind and visually impaired is widely known to be at about 70%. I can also share with you that 70% of the people who are blind and visually impaired who use Braille are employed. So those are the two distinctions there, that much more likely to be a successful employee if you have Braille use.
Okay, we have a question. What role can an occupational therapist play in promoting Braille literacy?
This is Madison. I think the question was, what role can an OT play in learning Braille? Is that correct? That's a great question. And I think there's sometimes a lot of confusion as to what is, Maureen and I, what's our role of VRT? And it is very helpful if someone is working with an occupational therapy, if we can work together as a team. That definitely is great when it's possible. Or if we know there's an OT, we can connect if the person's wanting us to, and we can talk about just those tracking exercises or show them the tracking exercises that we would work with someone on. And then they may have ideas of what they could work with as far as fine motor movement to make sure they're using both hands or, able to follow from left to right on the same line. So I think communication and collaboration is great when we're able to do that, because we can share from our perspective what we're working on, and then they can share vice versa, and then come up with ideas together.
So I think this is kind of a follow-up question. It says, do you collaborate with OTs, occupational therapists, if there are tactile sensitivity challenges?
Hi, this is Maureen. I would say that I haven't had the opportunity to work with an awful lot of occupational therapists over the years, mostly because people weren't involved with it themselves, but I would have no hesitation in doing that if the person is involved with an occupational therapist. Some of the things that Madison talked about earlier about why somebody wouldn't have good sensitivity or something, may not be something that an occupational therapist might be able to improve on. It could be. I would always offer it to somebody, but I have no skill set to train somebody how to improve their sensitivity myself. If the OTs can do that, that would be great. But sometimes, like the neuropathy is a permanent damage. It's not something that can be regained. So unless OT has changed that in the last few years.
Mhm. And this is Madison. Again, I haven't worked too closely with an OT, but in my other role as an orientation and mobility specialist, I certainly have worked with physical therapists because those two professions do match up well. So like I said before, sharing what each of us are working on can sometimes change the focus of what we want to do with someone as far as activities, if we can work together. You know, for example, for orientation and mobility, I had someone working with an PT, and then they started focusing on balance where they weren't before, because that was an issue I was seeing. So there's definitely been times where someone didn't have an OT or a PT, but we can recommend it and give the reasons why, and then the person can follow up and make that happen if they're able to, you know, by starting with their primary.
We have a question. How can businesses or agencies obtain the equipment to translate their forms into Braille? And I guess this would just be a good general question, like how could any agency or organization get their materials translated into Braille?
Hi, this is Maureen. There's I would say it really depends on how many of copies you would want of something. There are some private agencies for the blind who have Braille transcription availability. They have computers that can do that. So that's a possibility. I have recommended to people, if they want a very large number, then they might want to consider going to the National Braille Press, which and then they do it at a much reduced rate. So if you were doing like a lot of brochures for your agency or your company, then I would encourage you to go that way. It's the National Braille Press.
Great. We have a question from Susan Ruff. Is there a list of children's books that are in both Braille and English so that students or classmates can read together?
National Braille Press also transcribes a lot of children's books. And one of the fun things that they also do is they do something that's kind of like what is referred to as a twin vision book, so that the print is there as well as the pictures, so that it doesn't matter if it's two children reading next to each other who are sighted and one is not, or it's a parent and a child. The parent could be the person who's the Braille reader, and the child can look at the pictures and look at the print, or the opposite, where it's the child learning to read Braille at the same time as the parent is able to do that. So National Braille Press has a wonderful collection there. The Talking Book and Braille Library does do the same thing, and then the person needs to be legally blind to receive those services at no cost.
This is sort of also looking at young people, this question. What's the youngest age you have taught someone Braille at? And I guess another question kind of related to that would be, you know, is there a recommended age that someone start learning Braille at?
This is Maureen. I would say because as certified vision rehabilitation therapists, we are not trained or certified in teaching reading. So Madison had mentioned that too earlier, so that we will work with adults who have learned to read and write print already, and learn to read and write English print, so that we can do that at whatever age that we're taking that person on. So I would say my youngest person that I've worked with is probably in their mid-20s. But ideally, if somebody is is a child who has no vision or very limited vision, and print is not going to be the optimal medium for them, I would say get them started as early as they can. Just there are things that can encourage use of tactile skills. There are Lego came out a few years back with Lego blocks that have Braille on them, so that just getting kids involved with playing with that, and their family and their kids can all play with them all at the same time. You want to encourage all of that from the very beginning, just as any parent does when they're reading to their children who are sighted. So the earlier the better, but I have never taught anybody probably under 25, because the school system takes care, does all that instruction through the time that they're probably going to be about 21 or so.
And this is Madison. In my experience, I did work with, I believe he was 16, and then another 18-year-old who had retinitis pigmentosa. So that's an eye condition that will degrade over time. They will lose more vision and can possibly lose all vision in adulthood. And it's a condition where it's usually diagnosed not until middle or high school. So that was a situation where I believe it was the summertime. He wasn't in school. So I, got started with him, quick learner. He was still reading print, but it was going to help him later on. And what I love about technology now is they have even apps now for learning Braille, and you can do Braille flashcards. So he had vision enough to use those apps, and do little flashcards where before you may have to practice in a different way. So, he was already on his phone a ton. So we had some way to practice Braille on his phone in his free time.
We had a question about how can deaf-blind learn Braille? Do they have ASL interpreters to sign ABC in their hands and learn Braille that way? I guess it's a question about how instruction works for the deaf-blind.
Very often it's going to be hand over hand instruction, so that the person, the learner, is going to have a Braille book in front of them, and the instructor will have their Braille book in front of them, and they'll be working side by side, or very often across the table from each other. And the Braille instructor may know finger spelling, so then that might be the way that they have to communicate. It could be that they're going to use an interpreter, but most times I would say that the Braille instructor, and if it's a vision rehab therapist, they're going to be able to use finger spelling and be able to spell into the person's hand. And it's going to very often be reading with one hand and talking with the other hand to each other.
And then we had a question about people that would learn Braille if they have dyslexia, or they have difficulty in sequencing the order of letters and sounds to do with Braille. So I guess that's kind of, you cover that in one of your slides, but I don't know if you can go into more depth on that.
Sure. This is again, Maureen. You may have noticed, if you saw the computers, that the computer simulated Braille there, those letters A through J. There's a lot of what's referred to by instructors are mirror images of each other. So the letter D is dots 1, 4, and 5, and F is 1, 2, and 4, so that they are the reverse of each other. E and I are exactly the same. So if somebody has difficulty in print as with a reading or learning disability, they may very well have challenges when they read, try to learn to read Braille, because things are going to be images of each other, mirror images of each other. So that could very well impact whether or not they're going to be successful in reading Braille. And that's where having, a reading teacher, it might be if it's a student. Sometimes we don't know if like a teacher or the visually impaired, if the instructor was teaching somebody Braille and they've never read print, it may be that that's where the diagnosis happens with somebody with the student, that they're finding that they're constantly reversing. as an instructor myself, it's very common for people to reverse that and they get used to it. And so I don't panic over that there's a learning disability at the beginning that is going to interfere, but it's very, very common for people to, was that an E or was it an I or was it a D or an F? It happens all the time in early stages of learning.
So I have Maria Samuels has her hand up, so I'm just going to unmute her, or ask her to unmute. Want to ask your question, Maria? I think Maria had also shared in the chat, the American Council of the Blind of New York has a statewide Braille Revival League that is successful, and it's a learning and fun group, and she provided a phone number as well, 800-522-3303. I guess, are there groups and what kind of resources are out there for, in people's local communities in terms of learning Braille? Are there groups, or how do they find out that information?
Each community, of course, is going to be different. There's going to be more probably availability of instructors in, some more metro areas than maybe in other areas of New York State. There has been a pretty consistent shortage of Braille instructors for, I would say, the last 10 years or so. Fewer and fewer of them are out there, so that I know that there are students in the North Country who don't have a teacher of the visually impaired in general, let alone knowing whether or not they're learning Braille. So that is one of the issues, and that's why the Braille Advisory Committee is taking this on, as Julie Hovey said earlier, that this is really important for the future. We want literate grown-ups coming up the way. In terms of where you could learn it, if you are legally blind and interested in services, then you should contact your local not-for-profit organization for the blind, or contact New York State Commission for the Blind, and then you can get connected with the private agencies as well. If you are a professional who would like to learn Braille and want to do it, both Madison and I can read Braille textually, but we're going to read it much faster visually. So you don't have to learn how to read it textually to be able to instruct. I feel like I should know how to do that. And so I've always challenged myself to do that as an instructor. But if you're interested in learning Braille, you can take a course through a program called the Hadley School for the Blind that's available for free for professionals and families to take that course. And it's a reading course for sight reading for Braille. And with that, you would learn all the rules, because every rule in Braille is going to have at least one exception. So that's why we really encourage that not just anybody start teaching Braille to a student, because those exceptions are going to make a huge difference in whether or not the child learns to read it correctly. So that's why we always want the person who's actually doing the instruction with the student to know to know the full array of Braille, rather than I'll keep us, a lesson or two ahead of them. While I teach them, I'll learn myself, and I'll be on the G and H while they're learning A and B. You really do need to know the full alphabet and the rules of Braille before you should start teaching it yourself. But I would encourage anybody who's interested. It's as we said, it's intriguing to a lot of people, and it is lots of fun. That wasn't makeup when I put it on the slide. It is fun to teach, and people are thrilled. I had a woman recently who she'd been working on it independently for quite a few months and had been doing well, but I gave her some things to read, and she read her first sentence aloud, and she literally just started crying. She's like, oh my gosh, this is what I've been trying to figure out. How would I ever use this? And she just broke down and started crying that she had actually read a sentence in Braille. And she's, 51 years old and is going to use it for the rest of her life, I'm sure. So yep, I would encourage it at any time.
Great. Well, thank you so much. Maria, if you should be able to unmute yourself. We have you unmuted. I don't know if you saw that. There you go.
Thank you, but I really had nothing else to add other than thank you for reading what I put in there. I'm a great, I'm just so happy you're doing this because I'm just so terrified of Braille fading away, as I keep seeing it happening every year, being replaced by technology that they're saying it's easier or better for students, and I don't agree. I think Braille literacy helps to make the students not only better students, but better throughout life, and even better in employment opportunities. They just perform better. And there's been studies for that, and I wish they would do more studies to prove that, because I firmly believe that. That's pretty much what I wanted to say, but thanks again for doing this. It's so important. Thank
Great.
you.
Thank
you, Maria. Yeah, the call was a little garbled, but Maria was just emphasizing, I think, what Maria Dibble said at the opening about the importance of Braille literacy and for students and being able to read and write in Braille. So I don't see any more questions right now, unless anyone wants to put one in quickly. Okay, well, thank you everyone for joining us today. I really appreciate you, Madison and Maureen, for your presentation today, and thank you for joining us, Julie and Maria. This was really a great presentation, and our sign language interpreters and our captioner today, thank you. And a recording of this presentation will be available on our website, ilny.org, under training and education. And we'll also be sharing a email following the presentation with a link. So you'll be able to access the recording once we finish, and maybe make the slides available as well. I don't know if that's possible, but we'll see. We'll see. Well, thank you everyone for joining. Take care. Bye.
Thank you.
Thank you to our 2022 webinar series sponsor, Waymo. Waymo is an autonomous driving technology company with a mission to make it safe and easy for people and things to get where they're going. We believe that fully autonomous technology holds the promise to improve road safety and offer new mobility options to millions of people. This is why we're designing Waymo Driver, our autonomous technology to give people a new kind of freedom to go where they want, when they want, while making the frustrations and concerns with driving a thing of the past. Logo fades into view. New York Association on Independent Living.